Hello, friends. We are now in Rays and Initiations webinar commentary number 91. We're in the second part of the book, around page 658. So we're talking about the planetary logos and the seven phases of a process which he initiated in preparation to a kind of divine planting. Men are being initiated into phases of the divine consciousness through the seven root races. The word planting is symbolic, and each phase, each one of these seven, brings the original divine purpose or spiritual project nearer to fruition. I think it's all part of the development of what is occurring for the planetary logos in this fourth chain, and focally for us on the fourth globe. So the purpose is coming nearer fruition, and this is what brought Sanat Kumara, an emanation really of the planetary logos, into manifestation or into incarnation. Whether Sanat Kumara pertains only to the fourth chain is doubtful. He seems to have a place very high in the planetary scheme, and I suppose could be emanated into any one of the chains, which themselves are in a way emanations, as are every globe in all the seven chains, or maybe there are 10, 3 subjective. So let's go on here and see what the Tibetan has in mind. Each of these phases of the seven root races affect all the four kingdoms in nature, producing a higher stage of sensitivity at each successive one. So let's just say consciousness is increasing with each successive stage. I'm going to do this in purple a little bit. I think it may be good because it'll help me find the pages more quickly that are in red. So higher sensitivity with each successive stage, but it is only in the fourth kingdom, the human, that there exists the possibility of conscious registering and recognition of divine intent and a faint vibrating response to the will aspect of deity. The other kingdoms follow, but not consciously, and only humanity can faintly and consciously respond to the divine will. It has taken millennia of years to bring this about, and I assume, well, millennia of years or thousands, but I do believe we're even speaking of millions of years, when you remember that it has only been in the present world crisis that the planetary logos dared subject the forms in all the four kingdoms to the direct stimulation of its impelling will. Maybe we can say that from 1825 and onward, 3 Shambhala impacts, really. 1825, then definitely there were the great decisions of 1854, 1903, 1952, 2001. Those are shambhalic forces released by 6-degree initiates, and then the Shambhala impact of 1975, and then again in the year 2000. So, in a way, it seems that they are increasing in their frequency. But of course, what's coming is a very important period. We can call it the period of the 100-year conclave. And it's not said that this is specifically a Shambhala impact, but of course, Shambhala makes important decisions at that time with respect to the future of humanity, and in this case, it'll be with respect to the externalization of the hierarchy, a huge planetary event, and the reappearance of the Christ. So when you remember that it has only been in the present world crisis from that the planetary logos dared subject the forms, he has an exquisite sense of their capacity and their resiliency in all the four kingdoms through the direct stimulation of his impelling will. And we might say here, via the Shambhala impacts, that you will realize the long, long patient experience, which is perhaps his most distinctive characteristic. Interesting to speak of the quality of patience of the planetary logos. Patience is a quality of the will, because the will has to restrain elemental impulse for patience to be exercised. The will must restrain elemental impulse for the for patience to occur. It is of the nature of a strict adherence to a fixed intention. So we might say that even the planetary logos has fixed intention, even though fixed intention is not considered for man the highest aspect of his of man's will. Okay, intention. At each transition from one civilization to another, each being built upon the cultural seed of the preceding one, so culture is the essence, the harvest is the essence, the harvest of value, harvest, and after a due flowering of the civilization, a flowering is necessary if culture is to be concentrated. We could say of Sanat Kumara what has been said of the Christ, that he sees of the travail of his soul and is satisfied, and so can move on to his next expression. So blind are men that when a civilization comes to an end, when the familiar mode of cultural expression is brought, as is usual, under the hand of the destroyer, and we see this happening now, humanity regards it as a major disaster and dreads and fears the ruin which usually surrounds such an event, because there's no anticipation of the future, no forethought, and too much attachment to that which has been. But from the standpoint of the world of significances, progress is seen, and the day of fulfillment draws nearer. This is from the spiritual triadic perspective. The spiritual triad is the world of significances, and progress is impelled from the spiritual triad under the impulse of the monad. Our modern civilization today, under the hammer of the destroyer aspect, and this, of course, this invokes the image of Vulcan, is being changed. Old things are passing away, having served their purpose. The new thing is not yet noted or appreciated, though already present. It's the Aquarian culture in its seed form. The work of preparation for the planting of the germ or seed of the divine will on earth is nearly over. Okay, so he's talking about planting the divine will, probably through the Shambhala impacts. When the hierarchy is externalized, the men and men as a whole recognize the position on earth of the Christ and of his church, invisible, the union of all souls made perfect, which is a true description of the hierarchy. That's beautiful. Then, in a manner unforeseen by humanity, Shambhala will assume control, and from the council chamber of Sanat Kumar will issue forth the sower of the seed. Well, this is, I think, far into the future. If the sower is Sanat Kumara. Okay. There will be the reappearance of the Christ and the presence of the church invisible even after the Christ with the Buddha passes before the great Lord and prepares to move on to other modes of service of an entirely higher nature, unspecified but probably involving a transition to the cosmic astral plane at the 8th initiation. So men as a whole, now that that's the hint, because in the coming externalization, some men will recognize recognize the nature of the Christ and his hierarchy, but not all. Anyway, there will be a recognition, men as a whole, eventually. But this may not be speaking of the Aquarian age per se, when some will recognize, though every eye will see him, recognize the position on earth of the Christ and his church invisible, the union of all souls made perfect. A beautiful description of hierarchy. The union of all souls made perfect. And here we're not just talking about the causal body, not speaking only of causal bodies. So, this is a true description of the hierarchy. Then, in a manner unforeseen by humanity, Shambhala will assume control, and from the council chamber of Sanat Kumar will issue forth the sower of the seed. He will sow it within the ground prepared by humanity, and thus the future is assured, not for the planetary logos alone, but for the greater whole in which our planet plays its little part. So I wonder, is this our solar system? And is he saying that success here on this planetary scheme, PLSCH, I think I want to make sure I can get that PLSC. Okay, this PL on this planetary scheme means success for the entire solar system. Is he saying that? But for the greater whole in which our planet plays its little part, and that is the solar system. the sower of the seed. Well, there will come a time when, in a way, Sanat Kumara will descend as close to the physical plane as will be possible for him. The moment lies ahead in the civilization which shall be, and in the next great race which will emerge out of all our modern races and nations, the sowing will take place. Well, that's interesting. The sixth root race will last for about 10 million years. So maybe at some point during that root race, this sowing will occur. He still hasn't specified who is the sower of the seed, but one gathers that it is from Shambhala. The next race will be a fusion of the whole. This is not even the seventh, this is the sixth, and a worldwide recognition of the one humanity, let's just say because of the strong Buddhic quality of that race. Whoops, let's see if I got this correct. Because of the strong Buddhic quality of that race is an essential prerequisite of the sowing. So recognize oneness must precede sowing, is what he's saying. Recognize oneness must precede the sowing of that root race. Okay, RR. Right. And this is, my typing is getting a little bit out of hand here. It is the creation of this universal recognition which will be one of the major tasks of the reappearing Christ and his attendant hierarchy. Creation of the sense of universality under Aquarius. Let's just say that Aquarius is the sign of universality, and the Christ and his hierarchy will promote this realization or recognition. It is the creation of this universal recognition which will be one of the major tasks of the reappearing Christ and his attendant hierarchy. Sometimes he talks about the sun and its attendant planets. Well, just as the planets attend upon the Solar Logos, so the hierarchy attends upon the Christ. When the little wills of men are beginning to respond on a measurably large scale to the greater will of the divine life, then the major task of Shambhala will become possible, and we would say not until so the will within humanity must be cultivated. Prior to that, humanity must respond to the light and love, which are preparatory streams of spiritual energy and which are already pouring forth in response to human invocation. So the next race is definitely the sixth root race, and I think we are now dealing with the we're dealing with the sixth subrace of the fifth root race, and the seventh has to come as well. But perhaps the seed, if Philip Lindsay's estimations are correct here, that the seed of the sixth root race is really being planted in the sixth sub-race of the present fifth root race. So Shambhala is on the move to fulfill its goal. Is on the move to fulfill its larger purpose with regard to our fourth chain and fourth globe. Okay, FRG And let's get that in fourth globe. Okay. In comprehending the planetary initiatory process as instituted by the planetary logos, under the will of the solar logos and the will of Sirius, men must relate them to the great crises which have occurred in all the races of men. Well, I think what's being said here is that planetary initiations bring crises into the races of men. Just as the initiate disciple passes from one initiation to another through a process of continuously leaving behind those aspects of the form life which have been destroyed by him as useless, so humanity leaves behind civilization after civilization under the stimulus of the evolving purpose of Sanat Kumara, who initiates constantly that which is new and that which will better serve his will. So let's just say that destruction and initiation go hand in hand, leaving behind the unnecessary. Men are apt to think that the whole evolutionary process, including the development of the subhuman kingdoms in nature, is merely a mode whereby man can reach perfection and develop better form through which to manifest that perfection. But in the last analysis, human progress is purely relative and incidental. Basically, we are speaking of planetary progress and a much greater initiatory process than that of man alone. The factor of supreme importance is the ability of the planetary logos to carry out his primary intention and bring his project to a sound consummation, thus fulfilling the task given to him by his great superior, the solar logos. And so man's progress is but part of this and incidental to the greater purpose of planetary initiation within the context of solar progress, solar initiatory progress, and on it goes. Because the progress of this great heart center, which we call our solar logos, is but part of the progress of our cosmic logos, of which that solar logos is the heart center, and the progress of that cosmic logos being perhaps maybe a solar plexus center in a supercosmic logos, maybe that, or possibly a sacral center, is part of the story of the initiation of the one about whom naught may be said, of which there will be seven, and on it goes through greater rising septenates. We have to awaken to the idea that there will always be plenty to do, and for us new fields of experience to be revealed, even though as the one great deity at a certain stage of freedom from whatever universe has been become, we can reflect the absolute infinity of which any universe is but an infinitesimal. And I think all real infinitesimals are absolute infinitesimals, necessarily smaller than any definite quantity, no matter how small. The eighth and ninth initiations, of which neither you nor I can know practically anything. That puts things in context, because if our great teacher puts himself in the position of not knowing anything of the great initiation called the eighth and ninth, what can we? It's absolutely purely speculative, but it helps us round out the numbers, we might say, relate to the initiations of those methods and techniques whereby the seed of will later flower in the third solar system, which will later flower in the third solar system, can be nurtured and fostered, and its growth promoted. So these are definite, the eighth and ninth initiations. Look ahead to the will project of the next solar system. This nurturing and fostering will be the task of a group of masters to be developed in the next major race, who at the initiation of decision, the sixth initiation, will dedicate themselves as a group to the path of Earth's service. The cultivators, we might say, the cultivators of the will for the next solar system. So the seeds of will can be nurtured. Let's call this, let's just call it simply, the nurturing of the seeds of will. The task of a group of masters who will be developed in the sixth root race, and kind of wonder what their monadic ray might be. I mean, is it the first? Certainly they have to have a connection with the first ray, and they will dedicate themselves to the path of Earth service, remembering that the Earth has, the planetary logos of the Earth has a first ray monad. So remember that the planetary logos of the Earth, of the Earth scheme, has a first ray monad. They will specifically and with full enlightenment pledge themselves to the promotion of Sanat Kumara's project, and this seems to be long in the making, and they will apparently stay with him for a long time. With this, our present group of masters are not specifically concerned. Their task is the application of the evolutionary process with a view to the preparation of the field of the world for the future divine sowing of these seeds of will. So what do we learn? We learn that the will project in preparation for the next solar system is planned and intended, and preparation is underway with our present group of masters. So what are our present group of masters doing? They are hastening evolution with a view to the preparation of the field for the future divine sowing. Now, ours is a first ray monadic planet. So it is important to the solar logos in the future solar system when the personality ray of the solar logos will probably be the first. And Uranus, with its first ray monad also will be of vital significance. Unless it will be so developed in this solar system that it need not appear in the next. But who can say of such things? You know, what's going to happen to the logoi of the three synthesizing planets? Won't they have to accompany the present solar logos as he rounds out his development, and they round out theirs as well? I mean, you know, you would think that in such a solar system, the first ray monad of Uranus would manifest much more powerfully than in this one, and the second ray monad of Neptune more powerfully than in this present solar system. As for the third ray monad of Saturn, I think it may have a third ray soul too, and it is manifesting powerfully in the present solar system. These are great mysteries, of course, and all we can do is say there is a subject here to be investigated and do some speculating. So DK is opening up subjects which are of great interest, but if they are, when considering the 8th and 9th initiations, not practical even for him, then what are they for us? I say they just kind of complete, in some way, a larger picture. Well, I just, you know, as I look at these sentences in black, I just want to stay here pondering until more light comes. But of course, we can look for the hints that may pop out for us in the text and bring them into our pondering. That's, as we know, how hints appear now. They appear in the mass of material that has been given to us. And the master doesn't say, go follow this hint. We have to be mature enough to recognize what for us is a hint. As I told you what's a big hint for me when I see that harmlessness is the expression of the life of the man who, and this is the hint, realizes himself to be everywhere. That for me is a statement I just can't pass over without really pondering it and attempting to apply it. Anyway, he's telling us something about the 8th and 9th degrees, the transition and the refusal. Most every path on the way of higher evolution is leading beyond the cosmic physical plane. The path of Earth service stays there for a while, but then those who are on it fight their way gradually onto the cosmic Buddhic plane with the path of the soul. These are words, and but we've been given a vast vista here, which should be inspiring to all of us. More I cannot tell you. He says, all I have done is to give you a hint as to the significance of the initiations. Significance, well, let's just say, significance moves towards purpose. Significance is a moving thing. Something is pointing the way to purpose. To purpose. DPR, which is different from meaning, which gives the relative place and importance of any item within a whole in relation to the other items in that whole. So, as to the significance of the initiations instituted by the Lord of the world, Sanat Kumara, but of course representing the planetary logos. Now, we know very little about initiations which may be occurring in other chains. Our fourth chain seems to be, at the moment, the place of activation with respect to the attention of our planetary logos, and it seems that our solar logos also is somehow taking an initiation through our planetary scheme. So, it's a double pressure of the planetary logos taking a subsidiary initiation, which is part of looks like a subsidiary initiation of the solar logos. The major initiation towards which we as a planet are headed is the cosmic initiation number 2, which is the baptism or purification. We're not there yet. And the major initiation in the solar grouping of initiations toward which the solar logos is heading is the cosmic transfiguration, the third great cosmic initiation, which will be the result of his mental polarization. And we don't know, has he experienced what for him on a higher level might be called his time in the desert and facing the temptations about which, what can we really know? But, the attempt to speculatively expand our understanding does lead to the cultivation of the abstract mind, and that's to the good. These are not, may I repeat, initiations to which the planetary logos is himself subjected. Those are different, right? The solar logos will be the one who subjects with Sirius behind it, I suppose. The solar logos is the being who subjects the planetary logos to initiations, with Sirius impelling the whole. Initiations to which the planetary logos is himself subject. The world crisis, whichever precede initiation on a planetary scale, are part of the preparatory work, tests, and trials which make possible some cosmic initiation to which he has been and will eventually be subjected. So, the major cosmic initiation, to which the planetary logos will before long be subjected, is the baptism or purification, the second initiation on a cosmic level. With them, we have no concern, nor would you understand if I were to be in any way explicit, but this does mean, of course, that Master DK knows something of these. The law of analogy and of correspondences breaks down at a certain point upon the path of understanding, and something new and utterly different enters in. Well, this is quite a statement. He's given us the law of analogy and correspondences as our great interpretive mechanism, but I guess it only goes so far. And then what is that new something? Well, for the time being, I find myself using as much as possible the law of analogy, and in a more detailed way the law of correspondences as what else do we have, It's liable to shed some light upon the process. The law of analogy holds good when considering the microcosm within the life of the macrocosm, but if you ventured outside that limited and manifested life, if that were possible, which it is not, you would contact other laws and other approaches to truth existent on cosmic levels. Well, we have 3 cosmic laws of which we are aware at the moment, and these are not, solar systemic laws. It's the cosmic law of synthesis, the cosmic law of attraction and repulsion, the cosmic law of economy, and then there's that intermediate law of karma, which it looks like a cosmic law connected with Sirius, but when we are dealing with the law of vibration, law of cohesion, law of disintegration, Oh, what is that? Fourth one. I'll skip it at the moment. Law of fixation, number 5. Law of love, number 6. Law of death, number 7. Matter of fact, I'll tell you what. Seems to me I had better uh, do my best to find out what these laws are. Um, let's start with law of cohesion, which is number 2, and the others will be listed. Yeah, law of magnetic control, there it is, okay, and the law of sacrifice and death. There are your 7 systemic laws, but they, in a way, are not cosmic. They pertain to the solar system and relate to the various sacred planets. Law of vibration to Vulcan, law of cohesion to Jupiter, law of disintegration to Saturn, law of magnetic control to Mercury, I suppose. Law of fixation to Venus, I suppose. These are soul ray assignments. Law of love to Neptune, and law of sacrifice and death to Uranus. Well, at least that's a start, and I think indicates some possible associations. And maybe when these laws function in a solar system which is in line with the first ray, the monadic ray will come in, and so the planetary assignments may change. The rays will stay the same, but the planets wielding them on a monadic level will change. Well, for instance, love monadically will be related to second ray Neptune if it's still a part of our solar system, and seventh ray of sacrifice and death, well, will that be related to a possible seventh ray monad of Jupiter, and so forth. Anyway, it would be purely speculative to get into such matters. It's just that we can think that at certain times the soul ray of a planet will be involved with a particular law, and at other more advanced times the monadic ray of that planet will be involved in wielding that law. So, truths are partial, and what we use for a long time as helpful interpretive methods break down at a certain point. So something else comes in rather than the law of analogy per se. And other approaches to truth exist, and other cosmic laws exist, of which we do not yet know anything, even names. But, for Master DK2, who's still on the cosmic physical plane, he has a great mind, and so many of these things are still speculative. There's little more that I can tell you anent the planetary initiations, or, as they might be more correctly called, the planetary initiatory processes. I mean, because they take a long time, obviously. And I guess we would want to go back to the time when our planetary logos took a first initiation. I think it would have to be in this solar system, because initiations have to do with the presence of the soul. In man, it's the 5th petal of his egoic lotus, and the previous solar system was a time when personality was being developed, it seems. Ours is the 5th of the solar systems, if we count those earlier ones. And that's the time when initiation or initiatory processes really emerge. So somewhere in this particular solar system, the first cosmic initiation of our planetary logos emerged, and you kind of wonder, was it in the 4th round, and did it have to do with man's individualization? Did it have to do with the opening of the planetary heart? It was the name of a conference we all once gave in New Zealand 20 years ago, I think. So that would have been relatively soon. But on the other hand, you have to wait a long time before initiation is possible. And there's lots of developments we have to pass through. So when will the second cosmic initiation be? Well, it could be millions of years ahead. It could be at the Judgment Day in the 5th round. And what about initiations of a larger type, which involve the entire planetary chain? Is there a 5th planetary chain initiation? Just the way, in a way, our planetary chain is undergoing a 4th subsidiary. Is there a 5th subsidiary connected with the 5th chain, and a 6th subsidiary, and a 7th subsidiary, and so forth? Well, these are speculations. They open up the mind, but, they're not terribly practical when it comes to what shall we do next. So anyway, planetary initiatory processes spanning what man would call very long periods of time. These affect our entire planetary life, but are not essentially initiations as we understand the term, or as that word could be applied to Sanat Kumara. They are a definite part of cosmic process, and particularly of solar evolution. Let's just say that in some way, I think we can say, some way, the solar logos is involved with all planetary initiatory processes. But they are, as we have seen, only preparatory to that initiation for which our world was made, the manifestation on earth of the highest of the 3 aspects, the will of God, or as it is universally called. When will that take place? That is really the, 5th cosmic initiation of our planetary logos. And even now we have not taken, as a planet, the 2nd cosmic initiation. Okay, so I'm going to CSINIT. I'm going to make that cosmic initiation. Okay. So we have a ways to go, and will it be done in this solar system? It's as if our solar logos and our planet are somewhat moving in tandem, and only if our base of the spine center, which is our planet, is sufficiently developed, I think, will it be possible for the solar logos to take the 5th cosmic, his 5th cosmic initiation in this 5th or 2nd major solar system. Otherwise, he'll have to content himself with the 4th cosmic initiation. There's kind of an analogy here. The Buddha was ready, we're told, to take the 3rd initiation, as human initiations go, on the moon chain, but at the time that he was ready, it wasn't being offered, although, maybe earlier, even the 4th of the human initiations were being offered. But the Buddha is, our Buddha, great though he is relatively late probably in the development along the moon chain initiatory process, and so had to wait until the moon chain lotuses came in the 3rd sub-race of the Atlantean root race, and then either in 4 sub 3 or 4 sub 4, he and the Christ took that same 3rd human initiation in a 4th ray ashram. It's extremely intricate, isn't it? All the things that have happened, and I'm aware that we're allowed to speculate here only because Master DK has given us what he has given us, which is a tremendous view of possibilities. It's way beyond, sometimes I get a little bit down when I look at what we have to deal with in an ordinary sense, and where the consciousness is focused, and the stages of relatively retarded consciousness at which so many human beings find themselves. But that's just the way it is. That's how far we have come, and if we're privileged to have received some information, as DK says, just a little before others have, don't feel proud about it, or you demonstrate your unfitness for it. We have to realize that it's a big responsibility, and what we do with it and how we share it with others will determine the quality of our discipleship. So we've been dealing with initiation on quite a large scale, and we've gone on to planetary initiations. I think from the fourth initiation onward, every initiation of a human being becomes a kind of planetary event, not just an individual event. And this becomes more and more so as the initiations rise. I mean, mastership, chohanship, 7th degree chohanship, 8th and 9th degrees, they are so very rare at this time, and they really are planetary events. Those who are thus initiated are planetary lives, and who's to say what a solar life is? It's the what is it? Seventh kingdom, the kingdom of solar lives. At what point do you become a solar life and not just a planetary life? Is it are all 9 initiations still planetary lives, or who are the kingdom of solar lives? Those who live within Shambhala, are they to be considered solar lives? The various planetary, intraplanetary Kumaras and so forth. Is Sanat Kumara himself to be considered a solar life? What has the Christ to do, being a direct disciple of Sanat Kumara, and with being a solar life? Just the way Sanat Kumara is considering him in a way as the planetary logos is a direct disciple of the solar logos. Well, vast is the consideration and deep, and we have the obligation not to be taken in by superficiality of any kind, having been given the privilege of having this amazing teaching offered to us at a time that can really expand our understanding and maybe, hopefully, our usefulness. Well, now we're getting into a section here. I did it again, I didn't push my chronometer. I don't know what's the matter with me here, but I suspect I've been going for about an hour, but the chronometer only shows 40 minutes. So, in any case, we're dealing now with the significance of the initiations. And it'll be a whole new subject, whole new subject. And always of the most fascinating kind. We now start our consideration of the 9 initiations, only this time we should be occupied with the relationship and detail connected with each initiation, viewing them, when possible, from the angle of the hierarchy and its effort on behalf of the evolutionary progress of the rate, and not so much from the angle of the soul-infused personality of the disciple. So we're going to view these initiations from the angle of hierarchy, and some of them have to be viewed that way because only those who are members of the hierarchy can actually take these initiations, and the soul-infused personality of the disciple cannot really, unless its nature is such that it is a member of the hierarchy. It must be remembered from the start that no disciple can pass through the initiatory experience unless he is a soul-infused individual. And by that, and in a way, we even mean for some of them, triadally infused. via the Antakarana, and is consciously aware on soul levels of the various happenings, possibilities, undertakings, and implications. So we are even speaking of the triadal consciousness of the members of the hierarchy. In all the many books which I have given to the world, his Gemini is really coming out, isn't it? I have taught much anent initiation, and he began it that way, understanding the eagerness of humanity for expansion of consciousness. I have taught much anent initiation. I have sought to bring a saner, more reasonable presentation of these great crises in the life of every disciple. Some of the wild, fanciful things that are said bear no resemblance to the sanctified normality, that's the term he uses, which characterizes the life of the initiate. It is wise to note that an initiation is in reality a crisis, a climaxing event, and is only truly brought about when the disciple has learned patience, endurance, and sagacity in emerging from the many preceding and less important crises. Let's underline that somehow. It's not a superficial event. It's not something that is just given to you if you're a good disciple, something we have to earn through patience, endurance, applied wisdom, sagacity in emerging from the many preceding and less important crises. We have so many of those. I wonder if we recognize them and what their role is in preparing for the actual initiations. An initiation is a culminating episode made possible because the self-inspired discipline to which the disciple has forced himself to conform. So, in many ways, an initiation is self-initiated. Self-initiated. So we force ourselves to conform to the necessary discipline, and the self inspires, and the self would mean that type of higher center, whether soul or triad or even monad, from which we can receive inspiration as we move forward into expanded consciousness. Culminating episode. And we must also remember the initiate is initiate before he is initiated. Much has been said in the occult books about the preparatory work to be done and the effort which such a task entails. And if we're overly ambitious, the occult accolade is not ours, and if we are negligent, sloppy in our approach, the occult accolade is not ours. It's a balanced and sane approach we must have. So much has been given about the preparatory work and the effort entailed, plus the realization of the consequences initiated and expressing themselves through the individual aspirant. The results. Little has been said anent the more important truth that initiation admits a man into some area or level of the divine consciousness, into a plane or rather state of being hitherto regarded as sealed and closed. Well, we break into or allowed into a new arena of life and energy, we might say. A new arena of life and energy. So there are so many, let's call them hermetically sealed areas of life and consciousness about which we have no experience. Right. So always wider, but when we break into the new field, we have to not only penetrate, but we have to polarize within that new field, and we have to precipitate the new energies usefully into probably the field that we left behind in terms of our service to that field. I shall not touch upon the ray effects because we have already considered them, and because each level of consciousness, each phase or revealed area of the lighted way, is open to souls on all the rays and to every type of initiate. So in this, so we can say that in this discussion, we begin to transcend concentration upon the rays per se. All areas or fields of energy and life are open to all ray types. Well, we have been dealing with the way the rays do contribute to the taking and stabilizing of each initiation. So let's see what DK offers us here. From the standpoint of hierarchy, it is not the individual initiate who is of importance, but the groups in every land who face initiation and who fall into three categories. Hierarchy is ever group conscious, and to them the advancing groups of possible initiates are that which is of importance. So the groups fall into three categories. Let's see how he looks at this. Those in the group who have caught the vision. The groups in every land who face initiation and who fall into three categories. So those in the group, a group within a group in a way, who have caught the vision, who accept the fact of hierarchy and a proffered opportunity, but who are nevertheless quite unready for the next step and must be taught and prepared to take it. Well, maybe that includes many of us. Yet they are set apart for fulfillment, until there's a readiness for that next step. They are inspired. They follow the vision. They realize an opportunity is being offered. They're simply not ready. Yet they are set apart for fulfillment, as it is esoterically called, and in spite of fluctuations and the many vicissitudes of the path, they will eventually attain their goal. So in prep for initiation, but not there yet. Okay. The next group, those in preparation for some specific initiation, particularly the first to third inclusive. Well, it sounds like maybe the first group composed more of accepting disciples or accepting aspirants. Now we have those in preparation for some specific initiation, particularly the first initiation to the third, inclusive, for which Master DK is training some disciples. They have set their hands to the plow, another way of saying symbolically that they are toiling for the service of their fellow men. They have set their hands to the plow. So this is specific preparation for one or other of the first three initiations. Those now, third, another group, those who have had the needed training and await the hour of initiation. Okay, so this can be astrologically determined. and or cyclically determined. As I've said, the first two initiations, those of the birth and baptism, are not regarded by hierarchy as major initiations. Depends on the context. Sometimes they're listed among the major 5 monastic initiations, and sometimes from a higher perspective they are seen as initiations of the threshold. They are in the nature of initiations of the threshold and are simply phases of or preparatory to the third initiation, as occult students call it, which is in reality the first major initiation. I think we're familiar with this idea. So we say from the hierarchical perspective, the initiate of the third degree is the first real initiate. This must be most carefully held in mind, for these initiations indicate the process through which the personality can become soul-infused, and the energy of the spiritual triad can make his presence felt. Okay, because the antakarana can be built and used as the second degree approaches and following. So the spiritual triad can make its presence felt. For the sake of clarity, however, and because the birth and baptism initiations have been counted in with the true major initiations by the modern teachers of theosophy and similar occult bodies, and because people are therefore accustomed so to consider them, we will preserve the old method of counting them. And he does that in various places. The thought of soul infusion must be held in mind. A soul indwelling which culminates at the third initiation, and of monadic control which increasingly possesses the soul-infused personality, giving strong evidence of its presence at the fourth degree. So always more and more of the soul of that particular high state of energy and realization enters and, in a way culminates at the third degree, but, a more specific type of soul infusion, more complete part, I think occurs at the fourth degree, along with a degree of triadal infusion. This higher possessiveness, interesting, monadic control which increasingly possesses the soul-infused personality. Okay, this higher possessiveness, interesting, steadily increases from the time of the third initiation until the seventh. The okay, hold on. Right. The man becomes, let's see, MDL. Okay, MDL. MDL. And we're going to call that monadically. Monadically possessed. The man becomes monadically possessed. Through the seventh initiation? Okay, perhaps. It says until the seventh initiation is included. After the seventh initiation, a condition can be seen which is extraplanetary in nature, and of which little can be known. Maybe, okay, I think it's time to get my bracket there. Little can be known. This may involve the influence of certain sacred planets in our solar system. This brings in for the first time the registration or consciousness of cosmic consciousness. Well, even perhaps even beyond our solar system, and not only sacred planets. So now we're going to get into an area which we tend to like to review. The initiations are considered now one by one. Not so much from the ray perspective, remembering, of course, that every human being can pass through these initiations and be acquainted with that field of energy to which the initiation admits. So now we have then initiation number 1, which is the birth in Bethlehem. So here we are considering the birth of Bethlehem. And DK tells us, I have preserved the above Christian nomenclature because of its familiarity, and because, symbolically speaking, it conveys an aspect of a major truth. Now, you kind of wonder whether the popularity of Christianity is a necessary prerequisite to understanding the Christian nomenclature. Certainly at the time that it was written, Christianity was strongly developed in the world. It has been, in some senses, fading, although maybe the more evangelical aspect of it has been growing. In any case, we in the West are quite familiar with these terms. It conveys an aspect of a major truth, just as the birth of a child is an entrance into light, literally speaking, and the beginning of an entirely new way of life. After the interlude on the inner planes. So each successive initiation is in an exactly similar manner an entrance into light. More things come to light. New energies come to light, and new circumstances and conditions come to light. Okay. Involving the revelation of a different world to the one hitherto known, and the undergoing of an entirely new experience. It just can't happen all at once, can it? If you're looking for the all-at-onceness, you've got to look at absolute infinity. And you have to look at the idea that in some state, all possible experiences apparently extended in time are superimposed. That's a difficult subject, and one I'm working on. So anyway, each initiation, entirely new experiences. If students would keep this symbolically and this definition carefully in mind, they would arrive at a keener concept of the processes which lie ahead of them, and coming into ever new intensities of revelatory light. This is particularly true in connection with this first initiation. The analogy holds good from the very dawn of history where humanity is concerned. Well, it's such a such a dramatic departure from that which existed previously. Such a dramatic departure from that which characterized the inner plane experiences between incarnations, right? In ancient Lemuria, with the coming in of the mental idea and mechanism, let's say either stimulated by the solar angels or stimulated by the solar angels or through the implanting of the solar angelic, S-A-N, spark of mind. Oh, let's see if we can get solar angelic here. S-A-N-C. I don't think we have it. S-A-N-C. That ought to do it. Okay. And let's just call it solar angelic. Okay. The solar angelic spark of mind, the low-grade animal life, low in its vibratory responsiveness to its environment, which to a certain extent looked human, but was definitely mindless, unknowing, and unseeing. Does he mean literally? Unseeing? Whoop. Okay. Sorry for the delay here. Literally unseeing, because sometimes we read about the groping creature, the curious groping creature who could not see, became suddenly aware of that which threw light upon its way. Is this awareness of the inner God, to which HPB said these early forms of man had a great devotion? Was this the awareness of the inner God or angel? It meant little to the animal men of those days, but it became increasingly to have significance as millennia of years elapsed. Whew, what patience required, huh? And here we are at the point where we can begin evaluating all this. What a movie it will be when we see the long history of our own progress and the many mistakes and retardations and opportunities for advancement taken or rejected. It meant little to the animal man of those days, but came increasingly to have significance as millennia of years elapsed. Civilizations came and went, races developed and disappeared. In Lemurian days, the indwelling light of perception, though it was a perception so remote from ours as to be practically inconceivable, it took a while. It took a while before newly made man became self-aware. We're told how long? 3 million years. 3 million years. He may have been individualized 21 million years ago, but it wasn't until 18 million years ago that he came to himself, began to realize himself as a distinct being. Maybe we could call that the real beginning of ego awareness in the lower sense. So it was a perception so remote from ours as to be practically inconceivable, revealed the physical world, and that found upon it, which the human being of that time would deem desirable. So is this about, we might ask, is this about the slow development of the eye? So there was something that threw light upon its way. It was mindless, it was unknowing, and, well, literally unseeing. There have been some descriptions of that and of the development of the eye, which gradually receded into the head. Something threw light upon its way. It meant little to the animal men of those days, but it became increasingly to have significance, or to stand out in the field of consciousness, to stand out in the field of consciousness. As millennia of years elapsed, civilizations came and went. Well, there had to have been sight, or there could not have been those huge cyclopean structures. Civilizations came and went, races developed and disappeared. In Lemurian days, the indwelling light of perception, though it was a perception so remote from ours as to be practically inconceivable, revealed the physical world, and that found upon it which the human being of the time would deem desirable. So certainly a kind of desire at that time, a kind of desire awakened. Later in the Atlantean times, that same indwelling light, unfolding light, indwelling light, so bringing new fields of consciousness, FOCS, that's what I'm going to do, FOCS, come, FOCS, fields of consciousness, revealing new fields of consciousness, the unfolding light of the mind served to reveal the world of emotions. So revelation comes always due to the presence of a field higher, to the presence and activity of a higher field. For instance, the higher field of the mind reveals the field of emotions. So the unfolding light of the mind served to reveal the world of emotions, and in the latter half of that period, it revealed the more aesthetic values. Not in early Atlantis, but in later. The arts began to flourish, color and beauty were registered, or we might say brought to light. In our more modern Aryan race, the light has revealed the world of thought and has brought us to a synthesis of the senses. A higher light than the light of lower mind revealed the world of thought. The senses were developed in earlier cycles of human living, but the synthesis, the coming in of the sixth sense, each of these three races in a mysterious manner has a correspondence on the racial side to the first three initiations, and it's obvious, Lemuria initiation 1, Atlantis initiation 2, and the Aryan race, the first true initiation number 3. It is a progressive 1, 2, 3 sequence. Today, as we enter the new era, the symbology of the fourth initiation, that of renunciation, has application. And what can we say is the slow activation of the Buddhic plane revealing the possibility of renunciation, activation. Right. Men face the necessity of renouncing the material values and of substituting the spiritual. Let's say really moving from the hall of ignorance into the hall of learning. Hall of learning. Well, let's have that. All right. Hall of learning. The ferment of the initiation process goes on all the time. We might say the higher powers within man are forcing the personality forward. Okay. These corrections I have to make. Undermining the materialism of the race of men, which is materialism is a condition of limited perception based on the lower senses, revealing more and more of the reality underlying the phenomenal world, the only world recognized by the Lemurians, except maybe, as HPB said, there was this attitude of devotion, which was found in the Lemurian man with respect to the presence of the solar angel, which he detected within himself. If she's correct. So, the reality underlying the phenomenal world was emphasized. Lemurians recognized only that, Atlanteans more, and at the same time providing that cultural field of experience in which those sons of men who are ready to do so undergo the 5 initiations. It's technically understood. So the revelation of spiritual culture. Okay. More and more the reality underlying the phenomenal world. So Atlantis, this therefore is our starting point. So we can, because in Atlantis there were initiations that occurred, although maybe in Lemuria too as well, in the relationship between the etheric and physical vehicle. But the time of real initiation began in Atlantis. So this is our starting point. That cultural field of experience, that's what we're in right now. We're in a certain cultural field of experience which allows us to understand something of the nature of initiation. The historical process can and will reveal my research thing here keeps coming up, and I don't want it to interfere. The historical process can and will reveal the gradual entrance of mankind into ever-expanding lighted areas of consciousness. We might say more light for growing humanity. Into these areas, the way of evolutionary unfoldment has led the race of men right up to the point where there are many, many thousands and millions, if you consider all of humanity, those in incarnation today and those that are out of incarnation upon the inner planes, who have been able to step out of the lighted field of the three worlds into another area where the light of the mind can be blended with the still greater light of the soul. Thousands in incarnation, millions if we consider those out of incarnation, a whole new area of experience has been introduced to human consciousness. They have, in past lives, even though recollection may be lacking, undergone the birth experience and initiation, and as a result of this, that which can reveal what the mind is unable to illumine is now developing and functioning within them. So I imagine that many, who study these things now have in times past undergone the first initiation, have stood before the Christ, or whoever was the initiator at that time, if it was a distant time, because the Christ has only been the initiator, we presume, for the last 2,500 years, being the head of the hierarchy only for the last 2,500 years. But always light reveals a new field of experience. Okay, so always light reveals a new field of experience. The light of life is now available, in a sense far more literally true than you can at this time perceive, and each successive initiation will see this clearly demonstrated. The life aspect is being revealed by the ever intensifying light. The light of life, it seems to be associated with Aries, sometimes with Taurus, maybe occasionally with Pisces, in different ways. The light of life, the life aspect is revealed. The monad, in other words, this is not only the revelation of the soul, but of the spiritual triad and monad. The birth initiation lies behind in the experience of many, and this is factually proved by the lives of those who are consciously and willingly oriented towards the light, who see a wider world than that of their own selfish interests, who are sensitive to the Christ life and to the spiritual consciousness in their fellow men, and who see in a horizon and vistas of contact unperceived by the average man. So this is a great listing, description of factors which characterize those who have taken first initiation. Okay. Right. All right. So let's the birth initiation lies behind in the experience of many, and this is factually proved by the lives of those who are consciously and willingly oriented towards the light, who see a wider world than that of their own selfish interests, who are sensitive to the Christ life and to the spiritual consciousness of their fellow men, and who see an horizon and vista of contact unperceived by their fellow human beings. Many of those fellow human beings. So this is another, I have to 665, and just I'm going to make a little and I'll call it qualities of the first initiation. So browse and go to AAB extracts, and we'll put that in. That seems important. Oriented towards the light, are we? Do we see a wider world than that of our own selfish interests? Are we sensitive to the Christ life and to the spiritual consciousness in our fellow men? And is our horizon and vista, our vistas of contact, are they those that are unperceived by the average individual, average human being? They realize a possible spiritual achievement unknown and undesired by those whose lives are conditioned entirely by either the emotions or the lower concrete mind, or I would say even by the personal, even by the strictly personal self. At this stage of unfoldment, they have a sense of conscious dualism. So they are in the hall of learning, knowing the fact of the existence of that something other than the phenomenal, emotional, and mental self. So this is a good test to see who may be those who truly have taken the first degree in another life. It's easy for second-rate types to overestimate those who are near to them, but DK is giving us guidance in this, so we don't overestimate and don't underestimate, but have a clearer perception within reason of where people stand and of where we stand. It's all, he's told us that the average disciple is always more conceited than the true initiate, and so often overestimates himself in the eagerness to achieve something wonderful and beyond the confines of average life experience. The first initiation might be regarded as the goal and reward of the mystical experience, where God, or the higher self is longed for, longing for God or the higher self or the higher power. It is fundamentally not an occult experience in the true sense of the term, for it is seldom accurately realized or consciously prepared for, as in the case of the later initiations, and this is why the first two initiations are not considered major initiations. So does one or not consciously prepare for the second degree? So it more or less happens as a result of aspiration and not specific mental occult development. Specific mental occult development is not commonly found in relation to, in relation to the first degree. Okay, IRLT. In relation to. Okay. In the mystical realization, there is naturally and normally an emphasis upon dualism, the hill and valley, the hill and valley experience of the average disciple of a certain degree. But in the new area of unfoldment, visioned and later to be struggled for and attained, initiation by initiation, unity is achieved and dualism disappears. We might say that in relation to the third circle of petals, a true unity is increasingly realized. And in the second group of petals, that dualism of a higher self and a lower self is increasingly understood. Students should therefore have in mind the following definite occult concept. The mystical way leads to the first initiation. Having achieved its purpose, it is then renounced, and the lighted way of occultism is then followed, leading to lighted areas of the higher states of consciousness. So let's just say in the arcane school, the very first lesson set is light on the path, and then they'll be following, after the magical work of the soul, the lighted way of integration. It's a cult training. It's assumed, I suppose, that many who come into the arcane school may have taken the first initiation and can be trained as real disciples. So let's just say the mystical way is the way of heightened sentiency and is not the lighted way of occultism leading to the higher initiations. And there is, after all, we're told, a very long time between the first initiation of the birth, the mystical initiation, and the taking of the second degree, which requires spiritual intelligence and mental illumination up to a point, of course. It's not necessarily the enlightenment of the third degree. Thus, both ways are seen to be essential. The mystical way is for the majority at this time, and that we really can't rush it, when we teach. We cannot rush this process when we teach people at various stages of the path. If you try to give an initiate who's training for the first degree what is relevant to the second degree, it won't work, and thus it goes. And an increasingly large number of mystics, sentiently feeling the presence of divinity, feeling the soul, will emerge out of the modern masses of men. You might say they feel the soul rather than see it. So, when you're studying the Master DK, obviously it's the occult path, it's the lighted way, and the illumined mind is being used to shed light upon the path. One still has the sentient capacity, but added to it is the ability increasingly to see as inspired by the light of the soul. Paralleling this, the occult way is attracting more and more of the world intelligentsia. And, in a way, you might say these people can be on any ray. Always there is a mind, It's not necessary that one have necessarily the fifth ray, the third ray, and the makeup. Maybe it helps to focus in the mind, but one can be part of the intelligentsia on any ray. Its experience is not basically religious as the Orthodox churchman would understand the word. And it is seemingly given that only the religious experience is the spiritual experience. We must discriminate, must we not? Must discriminate between religion and spirituality. And AA does this. I've seen the 12-step programs. They really do discriminate. Does this discrimination? It's a spiritual organization, not a religious organization. I think what's going to emerge even in the New World religion of the Aquarian age is not what we conventionally call religion, but what we increasingly realize as spirituality. The way of science is as deeply needed by mankind as is the way of religion, for God is found equally on both ways. And it will be, the Aquarian age will be a scientific age also, because the fifth ray is very powerful in Aquarius. The scientific way leads the aspirant into the world of energies and forces, which is the true world of occult endeavor, and that's maybe why DK tells us that, the true occultist is found on the fifth ray, where, studying specifically the energies and forces. So the scientific way leads the aspirant into the world of energies and forces, which is the true world of occult endeavor, revealing the universal mind. Well, it could be of the atmic plane, really, or anywhere where the three minds are uniting, and the workings of that great intelligence which created the manifested universe. And maybe we mean, this is getting pretty big, but the planetary logos, the solar logos. Do we mean the absolute deity of, or the one deity of cosmos? I don't know, maybe. But we need science as well as acute sentiency. So another way of saying this planetarily is we need both Uranus and Neptune. Those are the two great occult planets in our solar system, and they represent, respectively, science occultism, and then mysticality. The new man who comes to birth at the first initiation must and will tread the occult scientific way at some point, which inevitably leads him out of the world of mysticism into the scientific and assured perception of God as energy, or life, or energy. So it takes a number of lives to move into a scientific appreciation of energy and force, and not just a sentient registration. Okay, the first initiation marks the beginning of a totally new life and mode of living. It marks the commencement of a new manner of thinking and of conscious perception. Well, it is a birth into a new form of revelation. Light reveals the soul, at least sentiently, reveals the soul sentiently. So the soul is felt. Okay. Sentiently. Okay. Is felt. The life of the personality in the three worlds has for eons nurtured the germ of this new life and fostered the tiny spark of light within the relative darkness of the lower nature, the darkened chamber, as it is called. We live in a darkened chamber for a long time before there is that tiny spark of light growing into something greater and revealing a new area which it is possible for consciousness to apprehend. This process is now being brought to a close, though it is not at this stage entirely discontinued, for the new man has to learn how to walk, to talk, to create. He's just a babe, after all. He is a babe and not yet a little one. The consciousness is now, however, being focused elsewhere. It's a split, it's a duality. This leads to much pain and suffering until the definite choice is made in Libra often, which decides upon the treading of the path. A new dedication to service is vouchsafed, or it should be vouchsafe. A new dedication to service is vouchsafe, and the initiate is ready to undergo the baptism initiation. So finally, a choice must be made between the customary self and the self higher, increasingly revealed. And for a long time, you don't want one or the other. It's difficult because want it not, maybe maybe every initiation's that way. Even when we reach the fourth initiation, I don't want the old life of the customary soul. I want something new, which is of the spirit, so people are caught in that decision, having to relinquish what was safe, stable, customary for something that offers a much greater hope, but a lot of uncertainty along with it. So we're on this planet of purifying pain and releasing sorrow. Can't avoid this, apparently. We are the sort of hospital of the solar system. And it's all a question of being able to redeem the unredeemed energies of the previous solar system. Members of the new group of world servers should watch with care for all those who show signs of having passed through the birth experience and should help them towards greater maturity. Well, this is telling us that the new group of world servers members have taken the first degree, and even in other references, the second degree. They have to be on the lookout for those in whom the second degree attainments are showing themselves. They should assume that all those who truly this is a great this is one of those areas that I have culled out and used as talking about what is the first degree, what is the second degree. They should assume that all those who truly love their fellow men, who are interested in the esoteric teaching or maybe some spiritual teaching, and who seek to discipline themselves in order to attain greater beauty of life, have undergone the first initiation. When they discover those who are seeking mental polarization, although they don't have it yet because it's something between the second and third degree, although mental focus can be had, leading to spiritual intelligence and mental illumination. When they discover those who are seeking mental polarization and who evidence a desire and aspiration to think and to know, coupled with the distinguishing marks of those who have taken the first, because after all, you can have quite a bit of mentality and not even have taken the first, they can, in all probability, safely assume that such people have taken the second initiation or will be on the verge of doing so. This is one of those very important sentences, or a couple of sentences describing the qualities of those who have taken the first and second degree, and note that it's the new group of world servers who are on the lookout. So it's quite assumed that this fourth ray sort of Taurian group consists of many, and maybe the true members, who have taken the second degree and have to be on the lookout for those who've taken the first, and also those who've taken the second degree. Their duty will then be clear. It is by this close observation on the part of the world servers that the ranks of the new group are filled. Well, it makes it seem pretty high, doesn't it? The requirements, come filled. The requirements, REQ, for membership in the new group world service are high. Today, the opportunity and the stimulation are so great that all servers must keep alert, developing in themselves the ability to register the quality for which search must be made, and giving the help and guidance which will weld into one cooperative band those disciples and initiates who should prepare the way for the Christ. And new group of world servers is preparing the way for the Christ. So it, when you say, oh, well, I'm a member of the new group of world servers, well, it's much more likely to be a man or woman of goodwill, right? Second degree initiates are not so common, though there are many thousands. So to be a true member there, you have to be able to recognize in others the taking of the first degree and even the taking of the second degree. So it tells you something about your standing, I would say. The first initiation should be regarded as instituting a new attitude towards relationships. What do we call it? Right human relationships. Right human relations, or relationships. This is not yet the case. Well, it certainly isn't the case with what we have in the world at this time. We have taking advantage. Oh, that thing again. Taking advantage of each other. And the attempt to live, how do you say it? Well, sort of live off your fellow men, not offering them what they need unless compelled, but seeking to take from them what they have. This is theft, and is something which leads to disease. Is it tuberculosis? I think suppression to cancer. And theft to tuberculosis. Anyway, it's not yet the case that there is a new attitude to the golden rule in action. We don't have that yet. But maybe, it's coming with the period of peace which is coming. So anyway, the relationships hitherto recognized, speaking generally, have been those karmically, physically, and emotionally instituted. We have our different families, physical, emotional, even mental families. We also have our spiritual families, but what has been recognized is basically physical, emotional, and sometimes mental. They are largely objective relationships and predominantly concern the phenomenal plane with its contacts, duties, responsibilities, and obligations. So we want to say, there are other families and other relationships to be recognized. The new relationships, however, to be increasingly recognized, are subjective and may have but little phenomenal indication. And those of us who are disciples at this time supposedly are forming relationships with people based upon these types of indications: subjective recognition, shared objectives, goals, aspirations. They embrace the recognition of those who must be served. They involve the expansion of the individual consciousness into a growing group awareness. They lead eventually to an eager response to hierarchical quality and to the magnetic pull of the ashram. These are new, necessary recognitions. Whom to serve, the cultivation of group awareness, and response to hierarchical quality. Whom to serve, I'll put this here. Whom to serve, realization of group consciousness, and also response to hierarchical quality. Such a development in the recognition of relationships leads finally to the recognition of the presence of the Christ and to relationship with Him. You know, what did He say? If you do this unto the least of these, you have done it unto me. So He has identification with all those who are recognized in new forms of relationship. So we are saying that right human relations leads eventually to recognition of the Christ. With the recognition of and the relationship to the planetary logos, we need not at this point deal. This would involve the third degree. All these relationships begin in their truest connotation with the correctly realized objective at the birth of the new man. So, well, what would we say? We're talking here about golden relationships, according to the golden rule found in so many of the world religions. To this, the Christ referred when He said, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. And obviously we don't mean physical rebirth. This is what is it? This is a psycho-spiritual rebirth. I'm here using the Christian terminology, but prefer to speak of the new man, rather than the strictly Christian phase, the birth of the Christ child in the heart. Well, we're all, initiation is a process of being born again into successive fields of new energies and forces. It is by means of the touchstone of relationships that the world servers can contact the initiates and the accepted disciples in the world and can discover those aspirants who can be helped and trained. So the new group is looking both up and down. Okay, but it's not purple, and it must be. So we can distinguish what Master DK has said from my elaboration on this. So let me bring another point to your attention. Let's see what we have here. Oh, there's a lot here about the first initiation, so I have to see whether I can really deal with all this now, and I think I cannot. I cannot deal with it all right now. So let's see where we are in the middle of the first initiation. There we are. Let me bring another point to your attention. In the phenomenal world of the average human being who has not yet passed through the initiatory experience of the rebirth, the emphasis has ever been and is today upon the dual relationship of the sexes, and to this our novels, plays, movies, and affairs of all men bear testimony. So, sacral SC, sacral center based relationships are the present emphasis on the of those who have not experienced the birth. Creativity expresses itself mainly through the propagation of the race. Sacral center activation brought about through the relation of male and female, or the positive and negative poles in the human family. So for now, creation acts through procreation. This is right and good and part of the divine plan. I guess the perversions are not, however much liberality is shown to them and understanding about how they may have come into being. DK tells us about the Lemurian excesses and the tendency to break beyond what law has decreed in those days and carried on today. This is right and good and part of the divine plan, even though men have prostituted their capacities and debased their relationships. The basic plan is divine and ideal. After the first initiation, the entire sex relationship shifts gradually and steadily into its proper place as simply a natural phase of existence in the three worlds, and as one of the normal correct appetites, but the emphasis changes. So, sacral center and physical plane sex are involved in relation to the first initiation. And the planet Uranus is involved, but also other planets like Mars and maybe the moon as the form builder in some symbolic sense. So creativity is going to be coming in the transference of the sacral center energies to the throat. The higher experience and correspondence, that of which physical sex is only a symbol, becomes apparent. So what is this? This is a relationship of the personality to the soul. Instead of male and female, there emerges the magnetic relationship between the now negative personality and the positive soul, with consequent creativity upon the higher planes. Of this relationship, the head center and the center between the eyebrows, agena center are the agents, and eventually, through the medium of the pituitary body and pineal gland, they condition the personality, rendering it soul infused. So we need a special activation between these two glands for real soul infusion to occur. Well, I know that the fact that I missed again pressing the chronometer is not going to make life easier. But let's just say that I don't think I can finish this all right now. So this is the end of Rays and Initiations, webinar commentary number 91. And this is being done on the 21st of July. I think it's July, isn't it? 2017. And we're on page 669. And I'm hoping that having put some of these things in red, they'll be easier to find. 669. Okay. Always go through this. It's a slight waste of time. Excuse me. 661, 669. Okay, there it is. 661. Yeah. 660, 659. Okay. 659, 658. 658 to, and now I've forgotten. Is it 669? I hope that's it. And now I'll come down here. Okay. Yep, 669. So, covered quite a bit of ground here. 658 to 669, quite a bit of ground. And this will be the beginning of Ray's Initiation Webinar Commentary number 92. I'm not sure what day I'll do this on, whether tonight or later. But we begin with 669 and onward. So, okay, friends. We've been looking at the initiations more specifically, not so much from the Ray perspective, but what they mean to all who may be concerned with the taking of them, what they mean to humanity, the entrance into light, revealing a whole new area of energy and experience, the characteristics of the first and second degree initiates who are not really true initiates, the need for science as well as mysticism, the idea of the mystical path and the path which is the lighted path of occultism, where we really use the soul-illumined mind, the idea that this is a great opportunity standing before humanity. Correcting a few things as we go along here. Well, the Christian terminology and the new, more occult terminology, all of these factors are involved. And what it really means to set your hand to the plow and to begin a whole new way of life. The analogy holds, the newborn is subjected to life again, and what seems like a new experience, but it is, of course, repeated. All of this is part of this natural process, eventually, which we can choose to follow now, or we can be swept along without specifically attempting to follow the process. And we will be raised up as we go, but with everybody else, of course, and not speeding forward to make up for lost time which occurred along the way when DK informs us how painfully slow humanity's response has been to the good laws that were given by the solar angels and at the time of individualization. we have much to make up for. But anyway, the difference between the normal human beings' relationship to the pairs of opposites, the male-female relation, and that which begins to develop around the time of the first degree relationship between, it seems like, the female personality and the assertive male position of the soul. Of course, eventually the soul itself becomes the receptive pole, and the monad or triad become the assertive pole. So the polarities shift as we go along. Okay, so I'll get these sent out to you right now. Brett is on a retreat, and it'll be a little while before we can get these to you. But I'm pulling ahead as I attempt to keep some discussion of this wonderful book coming. After all, it is something we might not ever read. You know, you look at it sometimes and it looks so complicated, so full of abstruse material that we might just fasten on one little part of the teaching and forget the other part. Well, we want the comprehensive approach, don't we? So we can assimilate in some kind of spherical sense what Master DK has given to us. So onward then, friends, and I'll be back with you before long. Lots of love, and study hard, and then make the effort, as we all do, to try to apply what we learn. See you soon. Bye-bye.